There's my stage play. It's in the description. But we're reviewing an episode, and I'm with his Jeffness. And I just wanted to say there's a line in here that I thought was, and I thought the actor Peter Geraghty playing Gardy I thought he played it very well, and he didn't overplay it. When the character played by Callie Thorne
Ballard.
Ballard, when she gets, what is it? An Appalachian shock thing, yeah. Appalachian Mountain shock, or whatever it's called.
It's called a shellfish allergy.
Yeah, shellfish allergy. And I liked all the weird camera work during that. But when she has that, and then he goes to see her in the hospital, Gardy, and he's told about that was her allergic reaction to seafood, and the doctor says to him, "Seems your partner has developed a sudden adult onset allergy to shellfish." And then Gardy says, "To shellfish? Oh no, that's tragic." But the reason why I found it, now, why did you find that? Did you find that funny, Jeff?
Yeah.
Why did you find it funny?
Because I laughed. I don't know.
Yeah, I find
the idea that in itself would be a tragedy.
Yes, because he loves seafood so much that it's a tragedy if someone can't eat it.
Yeah.
And I thought he played it very. I thought he didn't overdo the line. I thought that was very well delivered.
Okay, so the episode Ben is talking about is Homicide: Life on the Street, Season 6, Episode 7, entitled Saigon Rose, which was originally aired November 21st, 1997, and on NBC, of course. And I'm going to read David B. 226 Morris's review. After a 1-week hiatus, he's back for this week's episode. This written March 12th, 2006. But anyway, he says, "It is rare for Homicide to draw its news from the real world, a la Law and Order. Indeed, 2 of the times they did do something like this were in the crossovers they had done with Law and Order. As for real cases, I know of only 2 regular homicides that are based on real news stories, not in Simon's book. Season 3 is Colors, which was based on the 1992 murder of a Japanese exchange student, and Saigon Rose, which is based on an incident in New Orleans a few months earlier. Rather than deal with racism as much as Colors did, this one deals with a dark look inside the ugliness of a very disturbed soul. The episode deals with the multiple homicide at a Vietnamese restaurant. 4 members of the Nguyen family are killed while sitting down to dinner at the family restaurant. I have one note before I continue that, is that I've heard enough Vietnamese people with that name, that the name spelled Nguyen, the way it's pronounced by Vietnamese people sounds pretty much like WIN, like win. The way they said it in the episode was more like Nguyen. But anyway. Also killed is Officer Larry Jones, a policeman who moonlighted as a security guard for the family to earn some extra cash. The obvious, it was a very well-planned robbery. The reason that it breaks is because there are 2 surviving witnesses, the 2 surviving children, that are spared only because they are in the kitchen when the bullets start flying. They can identify the voice of the killer, a beat cop from the neighborhood named Toinette Perry. As the reason they recognize her is because the cop, like Jones, who was his partner, moonlighted as a security guard for them. Since there is a little mystery as to what happened, the drama of this episode occurs as we realize the nature of Perry. When we first meet her, she drives up to help Hamilton and Lewis identify the victims and offer her assistance in catching the killer. We slowly learn, first from Mrs. Jones and then from the officer's own jacket, that she is a lousy cop, sloppy in her police work with extreme paranoid tendencies and a borderline personality. In fact, the only reason that she made the force in the first place is because the fact that her father was a councilman who got the board to overlook her bad psych exam. The same qualities that make Perry a lousy cop make her a lousy criminal. Frank and Meldrick easily poke holes in her story. She cannot give a reasonable answer to any question, and she easily gets flustered. But we don't realize the true nature of her evil until we talk with her accomplice, her cousin, a paroled felon. He was supposed to rob the place cleanly, and later Toinette would show up and screw around with the evidence and witnesses so that he never got caught. Then Toinette came in and, without any pretense or reason, began shooting everyone in sight. Nor is this even her first murder. We learn near the end of the episode that she killed her own father a year ago. What makes all of this even more unsettling is that Perry feels absolutely no remorse for what has happened. Even when she lays the murders on her cousin, it's clear she's more concerned with herself than the lives that were lost. Camille McCurdy Ali is very unsettling in her portrait of a woman who clearly has no morality or scruples. The murder is so unsettling that the normally unflappable Dr. Cox is clearly unsettled by the viciousness of the slaughter. Indeed, she is so upset by this particular crime that she openly talked with Mike Kellerman about leaving the ME's office. Ironically, at this point, Kellerman is seriously considering a career change also. Georgia Ray Mahoney, who was released on bail a few weeks ago, has now been set free completely. The charges against her for both the detective shootings and the Collins murders dropped. One wonders, given the preponderance of evidence, how this was even possible. Furthermore, Georgia Ray has no intention of leaving Baltimore, and as she made clear in Birthday, she has every intention of blackmailing and breaking Kellerman about his involvement in the death of Luther. With Georgia Ray hounding him off the job, and Falzone still hounding him on it, in a slightly unrealistic sequence, the two detectives get into a scuffle and end up holding their guns on each other. Mike realizes the enormity of the trouble he is in. He finally confesses the truth to Juliana, who tells him that he can't carry this alone. He has to tell Meldrick and Stivers about the videotape Georgia Ray has. He'll need some time to get there, but when he does, neither will be thrilled. Unfortunately, things are continuing to spiral out of control. For the first time since the Blood Ties three-parter, Ballard and Gardy get a story of their own. Unfortunately, compared to Kellerman, it's a pretty lightweight one. After dining on the local delicacies of Baltimore, crab cakes, Laura suffers anaphylactic shock brought on by an allergic reaction to shellfish. This was something of an in-joke because actress Callie Thorne suffered from food allergies. The writers probably would have done better to give her some police work. To their credit, she'd get a case the following episode. We also meet one last demi-regular, Billy Lou, the new bartender at the waterfront, who has a very unique act with a double bass. Saigon Rose is a pretty disturbing episode in its portrait of a woman with no scruples whatsoever. We have no idea what's wrong with Toinette Perry, and her actions are truly senseless. This is how Homicide works, and even though it's not as brilliant as Every Mother's Son or the Mahoney Saga, it's pretty tense anyway. My score, 8.1. So that's what he says. Ben, what say you?
Right. There's quite a bit to cover in this. One minor thing is, I looked at the credits and you had I can't remember if it was an actor or an actress, where it was like one of the Vietnamese characters, and the thespian had a Chinese surname, and I wondered would they actually get in trouble for that these days? Would the Vietnamese?
Do you have a picture of that, Ben?
Do I have a picture of that? Yes, I probably do have a picture of that, but I will get to that in a moment. But there was a bit that David B 226 Morris, is that his name?
There you go.
I got it. Is that Juliana said something that was very accurate? Is that they're all involved? It's not just Kellerman. They're all involved in the cover-up. You know, they would look back at the body and all the things that she was involved, and Stivers was involved, and Lewis was involved. The whole fact that, you know, Mahoney was all beaten up before he was shot, and that was Lewis. And so that was in the. So they're all involved in it, and so I liked it in terms of the portrayal of Kellerman, is that he was acting less of the ESTP caricature, like bad, you know, like a bad caricature of an ESTP, and more towards more of a rounded human being. Whereas in some of the previous episodes, he was getting a bit more, acting a bit more like, you know, like a jock, like someone who's like too uncaring. And
yeah, well, we got a little bit of both in this because, yeah, he showed that he did care, but we also, of course, had the confrontation with Falzone where it was sort of like a macho display between the two.
Yeah, but I thought he played it well, though. I mean, I thought that Diamond played it well.
No, I'm not saying it's not played well. I'm just saying it was a.
Oh,
we still got that facet of the ESTP character there.
It's just that in other episodes I just felt that they wrote Kellerman as like too much of like, if you were trying to write a really annoying ESTP with like no heart and like being like obnoxiousness just for the sake of obnoxiousness, whereas in this he's more, the writers I think wrote him better in this episode, and part of that is because of the fact that he did get to a place where he was opening up to the ME, and so I like the storyline between those two. I also thought, so I've done that bit. I also thought, whilst before I go through the grabs, is that we could talk about the type of Bayliss, because they have that thing early on, you know, about his hypochondria. And that's very much a thing that SJs are concerned with. And I actually have a couple of snaps here that show the differences between ISFP and ISFJ. And would you generally agree with these? These are from Berens and Nardi. You see that, Jeff?
Yep.
So we've got right, so that's all stuff that's very much in the school of Kersey temperament theory. But specifically, the thing that I thought was interesting was Bayliss talking about like the hypochondria thing. And this is my original Model G graphic, folks, where it was all hand drawn, and then an INTJ looked at that and thought, we can do better. So I'll just mention this bit here, the SI minus. This is the idea that ISFJs, so someone like Bayliss has been typed by Jeff as an ISFJ, and I agree. So the guardian protector, and they like to remove discomfort. So they are like hypochondriacs. They don't like discomfort. They want to be, you know, they're always on the lookout for their bodily conditions and stuff. So for instance here, so let's see if these things match up with Bayliss, Jeff. So very sensitive to physical discomfort. Well, he didn't like that. He didn't like the rough sex, the idea of rough sex with that woman, did he?
No, I think he did sort of warm to it.
Prefers to stay.
He found her hot enough that he didn't.
Yeah. And then we've got, he prefers to stay in a relaxed condition, not overwork, avoids extremes, attentive caring, yes, gets ready to tasty food from, makes food from simplest products, combining them correctly, likes things elegant, creates a cozy atmosphere. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to go further than that, but these are the sorts of things. In fact, is it in there? Am I? And now I can go on to the other graphics.
I would say that Kersey was maybe a little bit kinder to ISFJs in his writings about them, in terms of not accusing them of being hypochondriacs, but saying that because they tend to volunteer for a lot of things and take care of a lot of things for people, that they do often overwork themselves or overexert themselves, so they are prone to illness because of that.
Yeah, and they also might pick it up from the people they're caring for.
Right.
But you know, we've talked before about, like, and Jess mentioned to me about SJs like talking about their health matters.
Yep.
They always like to, if they're not talking about other people, they're talking about their health deficits.
And of course, you know, you get once again a little bit of Munch's personality in his comments about Bayliss, because he's not approaching it from a sympathetic point of view at all. He's sort of he's suggesting like the worst possibilities of of what Bayliss has.
Yes, yes. And also, oh, it was a nice little touch at the end of the episode when she takes her wig off. That was good. We'll show you that later. There was
the only thing I thought about that was I was thinking, don't they make her do that before she's in the cell? But maybe not, because generally they confiscate anything that's not actually part of the person when they go in.
Yeah, that's right, because theoretically that could be a weapon and could like take the wig off and just shove it down someone's throat.
Yeah, or she could even have something hidden in it or something like that,
Yeah. Well, what else was I thinking about? Bayless. And S-Joe's. S-Joe's medical. It escapes me. It will have to.
Well, one thing looking at this picture that I noticed, is he still had the gun in his hand, and the way that they showed Perry shooting him, from a standing position in front of her like that, I don't have enough experience in either as a cop who's witnessed something like that, or as, the laws of physics or anything about it. So I don't know if that's actually like realistic or not, that somebody gets shot like that and they would still be holding the gun in that position as they hit the ground.
Yeah.
So when you turned them over, they would still, have a hold of the gun like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what's keeping this up in the air? I mean, rigor mortis.
But maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe the grip tightens in a situation like that. If the body tenses up, maybe it would clasp around the gun. I don't really know.
Yeah, it's a case of one of those things where it's not... It doesn't like strike you as, oh, that's impossible. It's just
no, it doesn't strike me as impossible. But it also strikes me as, thinking about the writing of it, that maybe that would have made it even a little more interesting if the gun does go out of his hand. Then if they see that gun first, they wonder if that's the murder weapon or not. If they drop the gun at the scene, because they don't know that it was his weapon, And so that would just be one little extra detail of them trying to find out whose gun that was if it hadn't been in his hand.
Well, maybe it's her being not entirely bright. Maybe she sort of like picked it up and like made it.
Yeah, and also, when the cousin went around taking all the jewelry and stuff, he doesn't take the cop's gun or his badge. So, maybe that would have also made it a little harder for the detectives to immediately identify him as the off-duty cop if he had taken that stuff as well.
Yeah, and also because you'd think, why not take the gun? They'd be able to get quite a bit of money for the gun.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You got a gun, you got a cop's badge. They say that all the wallets were gone, so apparently they took long enough to take his wallet, but not his gun or badge.
Yeah, I can imagine that badge would be quite a lot. I mean, if a criminal's trying to pose, as a, he could easily gain access by, hey, police, just holds up the badge.
They did establish that, he was afraid of her, and if she's, ordering him around with all this stuff, and they're kind of in a frantic, he's in a panic because he didn't expect her to kill everybody, then maybe he just forgot about that. So, it's not entirely unrealistic that he would, especially because the cop was lying face down, so it wasn't as visible.
Right, so I'm just going to make sure that
things until they turned them over.
I'm just going to make sure that the right thing's being shown. Yeah. Let's go back to the graphic, and then okay, so we've got the badge. Right, so here's your guy, Eric Overmyer.
Yeah, as I was looking, last week in those last couple of seasons at some of my favorite episodes in the final couple of seasons, I realized that the majority of them were written by Eric Overmyer, so he was a pretty good writer, and the other ones were David Simon. So the two of them, two of the better writers on the show, at least in the last couple of years.
Right, so we've got, I think Nick Gomez did a good job with the funky camera work.
Yeah.
When Ballard was getting ill. All the MPs are probably like that. What have we got here? You got Falzone showing off the guns. I wonder how tall the actor is, because he's quite a bit shorter than Kellerman. 3 or 4 inches.
Well, let's find out through the magic of technology.
I guess about 5'8", 5'9".
How tall is John Seda? Survey says 5'8".
Oh, I was not far. I thought this lighting very good.
Also, since I did look him up there, I can tell you that at the time of this episode, John Seda was, well, at the time of filming, he was 26 years old. He turned 27 by the time the episode actually aired.
No. Yeah, so I think the lighting's very good in this. And then here we go. This is when she starts getting queasy. There we go.
Once again, you have the amazing sensitivity of John Munch as she's passing out, and he says, "You're looking a little green around the gills there."
Yep. Yeah, that's what I thought. When I saw him here, that's when I started wondering about his height. Looking at his proportions there, I thought, right, here we go. Yeah, I think that's reasonable, them pulling guns on each other, because that's just a reflex action by that point.
Before you even ask, Reed Diamond is 6'1".
Ooh. Which is only 1 inch taller than yourself, Jeff.
That's true.
Jeff was a late developer. He had a growth spurt.
Sure, I did.
And then I was interested what's going on here. It's like, oh, the doctor now, enough of you. I'll now go see this pretty woman in this room. I'm now about to do my soap scene. And maybe this scene, maybe it crosses over and that scene is actually shown in some kind of soap opera that Jeff was watching. But I don't know if that had a weird crossover.
I'm not sure why that would be more likely to be a soap opera scene, but
no.
Whatever.
And then these people were amused by him reading this magazine.
Yeah.
And good expressions by and then just like random things in the background, like the guy in a US flag going by.
Well,
and
I'll
again,
say, not to spoil anything or anything, because this is not actually anything to do with the plot. It's just my speculation. But I think that Gardy is also an ISFJ, and so he's shown his sensitive side there, reading the female magazine. There will be stuff later on that that sort of more further establishes his character to lead me to those conclusions. But yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean he is risk averse. It does become.
But yeah, but I ended up I think enjoying his character quite a bit because of the fact that we had a different ISFJ to sort of compare and contrast with Bayless. That there are different ages, different backgrounds. You have some different elements to them.
Yeah, and also you've got Bayless, who's like 6'4", and he's nearer 5'4", and older, and they had that storyline where he didn't want to confront those youths, and he said, "Look, I'm over 50. Yeah, I'm getting too old for this."
Yeah, I was thinking I don't think he's anywhere close to 5'4", so I looked up his height. He's 5'10", so So while that does still make him look short next to Bayless, but he's not Michael J. Fox height.
No, he's not. In fact, he's only half an inch shorter than me.
Yeah, and now Callie Thorne is in fact shorter than 5'4". She's 5'3", so.
But yeah, I mean, there's a scene like with Bayless in this episode where he goes into a room that's full of these like young, strong black men, and he's like, again, he uses physical presence,
right,
to impose himself. So, non-type factors. Right. And again, very good lighting, movie standard lighting, where you could just pick out the features that you need to see in a face. I would say movie quality lighting, and again here, and also very good eyes. This actor, what did you think of his performance?
Well, yeah, I was about to say, with not that many lines, I thought he did a really good job because he portrays both. You know, if you just saw this picture, you're thinking this guy looks pretty intimidating, and yet they establish how terrified he is of his cousin, his female cousin. So they're like, if you think I'm, a badass dude, I'm scared of her. So that tells you what she's like.
Yeah. So I just really did like the lighting in this episode, which is one of these things which is like, especially in the UK, the not so good at lighting a scene where you've got white people and black people in the same skin, and they're not the same scene, and they're not lighting the skin correctly. Whereas, because in other episodes we've seen Pembleton, and it's been hard to see him because they're not lit him correctly. Just from a technical aspect. But all this, because this would have been shot at the time on one camera, and it takes a long time to get all this lighting correct. Even here. Oh, there we go. Right at the end. Takes off the syrup of figs wig.
Yeah. And like I said, I think, in real life, even in a holding cell situation, they would have probably removed that wig before she got in there. But.
Yep, I agree. But it's not something I thought of when I saw it. A member of the SP temperament, not necessarily a welcome member, Jeff, but do you think she's a member?
Well, probably. I mean, there are a lot of us. If you did a poll of the prison population, I would say it definitely would be a majority.
Yeah, just about over 90%, I suppose.
I don't know about 90%, but
okay, 95.
No, I don't think it's quite that high. We've talked about before. There are guardian criminals. They may not be as common, and there are even idealist and rational criminals. The rational criminals, I would say, tend to be more of what they call white-collar crime.
Yeah.
Trying to get away with
like Avon.
Fraud and things like that. I would say some of the guardian criminals probably would be too. You'd have some insider trading and that sort of stuff. Those kind of crimes.
Let's just say this character was making eyes at Lewis. As soon as she saw him, she was making eyes at him.
And how much of that is actually any kind of personal connection, and how much is just her being somebody who knows how to be a successful bartender / performance artist to get the tips.
Oh yes.
You make them think that she's into you.
Oh yeah, and there's women, if not girls, of certain types who'd be like 14, 15 who know how to do that.
Yeah.
A natural talent for...
Well, this will not be the last we see of her. Or Lewis. We'll see plenty more of him as well.
Right. What was I going to say? Oh, yes, Ellie Wang. Wang being a Chinese name, I believe.
Yep.
So, for instance, in Star Trek Voyager, you had Garrett Wang playing Ensign Harry Kim. And I was just wondering if these days it would be like, oh, you can't have a Chinese playing a Korean.
Yeah, and I don't know, of course, I don't know anything about her background. It's possible that, that it could be her married name and that she married a Chinese guy and she's actually Vietnamese. It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
But even if it is a Chinese actress, their thinking was most of the American audience is not going to be able to tell the difference between Chinese and Vietnamese. So.
Yeah, I just wonder how much of an issue that is. Because I know that disabled actors and actresses, they got pissed off with a film, I think it was called The Machinist, where they had an able-bodied actor play the the guy who was disabled. And it's like, because this is one of these areas where they don't actually have, you know, all these laws about discrimination don't actually extend to the music industry and the entertainment industry. So it's interesting that they so lots of hypocrisy, and also I don't think the minimum wage extends either to people working in theatre.
Well, I mean, we've got a member of the main cast of Homicide that's portraying a different ethnicity than he actually is, because John Seda is actually of Puerto Rican descent, and he's playing an Italian guy. So,
right.
And way back in the first couple of seasons, when we had Detective Corsetti, the actual real person he was based on was actually an Irish guy. And they originally had written him that way, but when they did the screen tests, they liked John Polito's audition so well, and they already had Yaphet Kotto going to play Giardello, so they didn't have another Italian character, so they changed the Irish guy to an Italian so that they could have Corsetti.
Right. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yes. So John Seda, however his name is, he is... being Puerto Rican, he has the advantage, and Peter Schiff has talked about this, is that in Puerto Rico, you don't have to pay federal income tax. Now, you do have to pay 30% state income tax in Puerto Rico.
He's not actually from Puerto Rico. That's just his family origin, his parents, you know, so it says here that he was from Chicago. So,
all right, because Pete, we can finish on this. That I'll give my mark. In fact, yeah. Anyway, so Peter Schiff now lives. Peter Schiff, I have on my wall, now lives in Puerto Rico in order to avoid the income tax, and he's saying that they must be crazy to be if they want to become a state, because then they would have to pay the federal income tax.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so I will give this 9 out of 10 for actually, although they didn't, tackling the issue of affirmative action and then sort of a little bit weaseling out of it by saying, oh, that she would have been caught out anyway because she didn't pass the psych exam. But she was in that position because of affirmative action, which is basically an unconstitutional policy.
All right, well, I'm going to be a little harder on it than you. I'm going to give it a 7.
Ooh.
I felt like the premise was good, but I felt like it was sort of missed opportunities in the writing in several areas in terms of what they did with the characters. I felt like some of the things I already said would have been more interesting if there was more mystery to it instead of we pretty much know right from the get-go who it was. So I felt like there was a lot of potential there for something that made it more interesting, more suspenseful. As it was just sort of a matter of, let's explore how screwed up this woman is. But even that, they don't, as Morris said, they don't delve into that deeply. So it just sort of exists as another, hey, you know, there's some horrible things. And, you know, as he said, the scene with the Falzone and Kellerman drawing their guns was, you know, a little bit kind of over the top, kind of cheesy. So, you know, the episode still holds my interest. There's still plenty of interesting things in it. I just sort of feel like there's some missed opportunity, so it's not as good as it could have been. So I'll give it a 7, and together with your 9, that would make an average of 8.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, like, yes, it can be seen as cheesy, them drawing guns on each other, but it's like when you do that so much, and they're both artisans, and what I've learned from sports is that, like, if you're doing an action all the while, and you're then like doing actions with almost without thinking about it, it's like someone pushes you. There's a certain reactions where they will act like that. I can see that as believable that they would pull a gun on each other, just through, you know, it's in the way the brain has been trained.
Yeah, and one thing I guess I would add is that as far as the story choices, the fandom, the news groups, See Kids, back then there were these things called Usenet news groups, and that was the way people talked about TV shows online. Because all the stuff that exists now, there was no Facebook and Reddit and all those things.
And also,
But
kids, the people online were probably smarter because it was hard to get on the internet.
well, they were not quite as much average population. I'll put it that way. But
Yeah.
But Homicide fandom collectively could not stand Falzone, and one of the reasons was they didn't like the way that he basically sort of became the guy who's pursuing Kellerman, and rather than do it in a sort of way where it's like he's presented as being sort of the antagonist of Kellerman, it's in a way that sort of makes him look like he's the hero of the situation, which was irritating to a lot of people. But I have to say that I agree with that to a point in terms of that I understand that the story itself, the way they do it is irritating, but I also don't think it's unrealistic in terms of this character, the way they present him, would be pursuing this the way that he is, and it's realistically frustrating. So I can understand, and so I don't have any problem with the show doing it that way, and certainly no fault of the actor for doing it that way. So it makes me dislike the character, but that's actually a credit to the writers and producers and how well they did the character, and that he is effectively annoying in his pursuit of Kellerman. So
yeah, I think it's perfectly believable that he's there, he's trying to prove himself, and he sees something fishy, and he's got the bit between his teeth, and he wants to, it's like, and it's at this point where there's a lot of ego involved, where it's like, hey, I know what's going up, don't try and fob me off, you're still keeping me on the outside.
We talked about before in the episode where Kellerman's brother showed up, that there can sort of be, that it was a good showcase for showing different perspectives of different SP type characters. And I think you see that with Kellerman and Falzone as well, because Kellerman looks at it as, if the roles were reversed, Kellerman would not be antagonizing Falzone the way that Falzone is antagonizing Kellerman, because Kellerman has already established that he has this, he's similar to G, despite being an SP, he has that attitude of cops protect other cops.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rat out other cops. So he would not be trying to bring Falzone down the way that Falzone is trying to do with Kellerman. So we've established that Falzone has a different attitude towards that. He feels like his own personal values are, I'm trying to get at the truth, and that's more important than protecting another cop.
That's why I think, to me, I mean, I know you think that Falzone, and you've got more experience with the character, but to me, so far, Falzone has almost been SFP-like, rather than STP-like.
And I could see, why anyone would think that, and I discussed that last time, and we'll have some more, discussion of him down the line, I'm sure, because he'll have plenty more episodes where he's featured in. So, like I said, much to the chagrin of some of the fans. But not to me. Like I said, I thought the character, I didn't have a problem with the character, with what he became. I think they still could have spent a little more time on some of the veteran characters, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, so repeating the scores, just so they'll be at the end of the video. You gave it a 9, I gave it a 7, for an average of 8. And join us next time for what you can probably tell is a Christmas time episode, as it is entitled All is Bright.
Oh, okay. Bye-bye, folks. I'll try to remember that. All is bright.
All is bright.